Good morning. Yeah, we're just a few seconds early. I think we're no longer early. We're ready for lesson number 7 of our worst stories about humanity in the scriptures. Those stories we don't talk about much, they're not always appropriate for our little children, and we leave them out. Today, we're going to follow up on a lesson we had last week about the Levite and his concubine in Benjamin, in Gibeah. And this week, we're going to talk about what happens when we decide to figure out what to do all by ourselves. What's our solution for that? And it's kind of like a bunch of toddlers who say, how do I fix this? Well, you blow it up or you kill it. Whatever it is, that their solution might be just a little bit extreme. Let's begin with a word of prayer before we have our first of the warm-up questions. Our Father in heaven, be with us this morning and be with those who can't be with us. Please be with Jerry Hill in the emergency room and help him through the difficulties that the doctors might be able to determine if his heart is indeed giving him the difficulties he's having right now. And be with Melinda Hay, and as she goes through the bronchitis and the respiratory problems she's having right now. Please be with Joy Jones as she fights this terrible cancer she's going through, and be with her and keep her spirits up. And thank you for those who are teaming together to take her to her chemotherapy. Lord, be with every one of us. But as we open your word this morning, please help us to open ourselves to hear what you have to say to us. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Amen. So kind of the basic idea behind our class is, why did God put this in the Bible? What message am I supposed to be getting out of this story that I've been neglecting and ignoring? And I think quite often the lesson and moral has to be, if you're going to live without God, it's going to get very, very bad, very, very ugly. God did not destroy the world by flood for nothing, and he will not come again and destroy this world by fire for nothing. There'll be a cause for it. But here's our only warm-up question for today. Are you a person who would rather switch than fight, or rather fight than switch? Got an example of that? Remember, of course, the cigarette commercial said, we'd rather fight than switch, and people would have a black eye drawn on, obviously, cartoonishly. But are you somebody who would rather fight than switch, or switch than fight? It's a situational. Well, this is an example. What example could you give in which you do one or the other? Yes?
And we got down, and that was her idea. So I thought, okay, we'll just fix it up and sell it. So I didn't want to fight her. So I switched. And we got down there, we got to remodel it. She got to enjoy the atmosphere, mountains, lakes, weather, people. And then she decided, no, let's keep this place. So I said, okay.
Rick was mentioning the fact that he'd gone down to Arizona, and he and his wife had decided before they were married, he had this house in the Phoenix area, isn't it? And so it needed repair, and they were going to go down. His wife wanted to repair that and sell it. So they went down and they started remodeling. And sure enough, as she got to enjoying Phoenix and that climate and the people and the scenery and all, they've decided to keep the house, just like Rick wanted to do all along. I think that was a sales job on your part, but I don't know. I don't know how that worked. But sometimes, if you're willing to be flexible on things that don't matter so much, is there anything you would fight on rather than switch? There are some who want to fight. You're absolutely right. Yeah, have you seen an example of that lately? I think that in my lane position on the freeway, there are some people who would just soon trade paint with me than yield. I don't understand those folks. They're going to come right into my lane. Now, maybe on the motorcycle they don't see me, but they got to see that red truck. There's no way you can't see flame red. That's just no way they miss it. Some folks are fighters, some folks are switchers. And sometimes it depends on the situation. Well, in this case, they're ready to fight. But of course, if you got the piece of a woman in the mail, you'd probably be ready to fight too. Beginning in verse 1 of Judges chapter 20. We're going to read all of chapter 20, and then we'll have a few questions, and we'll read all of chapter 21 this morning. Then all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, came out, and the congregation assembled as one person to the Lord at Mizpah. Remember, the Levite has chopped up his dead concubine and sent all the pieces, 12 pieces, throughout Israel. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, took their stand in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now, the sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the sons of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this wickedness take place?" So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came with my concubine to spend the night at Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. But the citizens of Gibeah rose up against me and surrounded the house at night, threatening me. They intended to kill me. Instead, they raped my concubine so that she died. And I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout the land of Israel's inheritance. For they have committed an outrageous sin and vile act in Israel. Behold, all you sons of Israel, give your response and advice here." Then all the people rose up as one person, saying, "Not one of us will go to his tent, nor will any of us go home. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. And we will take 10 men out of 100 throughout the tribes of Israel, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000 to supply provisions for the people. So when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, they may punish them for all the vile sin that they've committed in Israel." So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united as one man. Then the tribes of Israel sent men throughout the entire tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What is this wickedness that has taken place among you? Now then, turn over the men, the worthless men who are in Gibeah, so that we may put them to death and remove this wickedness from Israel." But the sons of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the sons of Israel. Instead, the sons of Benjamin gathered from the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the sons of Israel. From the cities on that day, the sons of Benjamin were counted. 26,000 men were counted who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were counted 700 choice men. Out of all these people, 700 choice men were left-handed. Each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Then the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were counted 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were men of war. Now the sons of Israel set out, went up to Bethel, and inquired of God and said, "Who shall go up for us to battle first for us to go battle against the sons of Benjamin?" Then the Lord said, "Judah shall go up first." So the sons of Israel got up in the morning and camped against Gibeah. The men of Israel went to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel lined up for battle against them at Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and struck to the ground on that day 22,000 men of Israel. But the people, the men of Israel, showed themselves courageous and lined up for battle again in the place where they had lined themselves up on the first day. And the sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and inquired of the Lord, saying, shall we again advance for battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against him. So the sons of Israel came against the sons of Benjamin on the second day, and Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah the second day, and struck to the ground again 18,000 men of the sons of Israel. All of these drew the sword. And the sons of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, Aaron's son, stood before it to minister in those days, saying, shall I yet again go out to battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin, or shall I stop? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will hand them over to you. So Israel set an ambush around Gibeah. And the sons of Israel went up against the sons of Benjamin on the third day, and lined up against Gibeah as at other times. When the sons of Benjamin went out against the people, they were lured away from the city, and they began to strike and kill some of the people as at other times on the roads, one of which goes up to Bethel, and the other to Gibeah. And in the field, about 30 men of Israel. And the sons of Benjamin said, they are defeated before us, like the first time. But the sons of Israel said, let's flee, so that we may draw them away from the city to the roads. Then all the men of Israel rose from their place and lined up at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel in ambush charged from their place, from Ma'areh Geba, when 10,000 choice men from all Israel came against Gibeah. The battle became fierce, but Benjamin did not know that disaster was close to them. And the Lord struck Benjamin before Israel, so that the sons of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day, all who drew the sword. So the sons of Benjamin saw that they were defeated, when the men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin, because they relied on the men in ambush, whom they had set against Gibeah. The men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah, and the men in ambush also deployed and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the agreed sign between the men of Israel and the men in ambush was that they would make a great cloud of smoke rise from the city. Then the men of Israel turned in the battle, and Benjamin began to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel, for they said, undoubtedly they're defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the cloud began to rise from the city in a column of smoke, Benjamin looked behind them, and behold, the entire city was going up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were terrified, for they saw the disaster was close to them. Therefore, they turned their backs before them, the men of Israel, to flee in the direction of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, while those who attacked from the cities were annihilating them in the midst of them. They surrounded Benjamin, pursued them without rest, and trampled them down opposite Gibeah toward the east. So 18,000 men of Benjamin fell. All of these were valiant men. The rest turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, but they caught 5,000 of them on the roads and overtook them at Gidom and killed 2,000 of them. So all those of Benjamin who fell that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword. All these were valiant men, but 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they remained at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. So, why didn't they just turn over the guilty? They should have. They should have. Why didn't they? Pride. It was pride. Anything else? Solidarity. They had their confidence in the wrong place. What was most important to them? Why didn't they just turn these people over? Why did they fight for these vile men who were doing these terrible things?
I think they did because of blood. The bloodline, since they were their brothers, so to speak, they did it that way. Instead of following what was right, they followed the bloodline.
They followed their bloodline. They didn't follow what was right. This was family. This was blood. So they're going to defend their tribe no matter what. Can we get that way ourselves? What was the Civil War about in American history? I know I was a history teacher for so long. What was that thing about? Here it's about states' rights, right? Guess what it's about up north? States' rights. It's about everything except for what it's about, honestly. Now, if you'll take a look at what everybody was saying before the Civil War started, they declared their independence state by state, and there was some mention of our economic system and our way of life, and there's something about slavery in all of those. They were afraid that slavery was going to be abolished whenever Lincoln became president. They knew it couldn't happen immediately, but they figured out that if the North could shove a president down their throats who wasn't even on the ballot in any of their states, and this guy was anti-slavery, I cannot imagine that my great-grandfathers fought to defend slaves that they didn't own. But they did. I don't get it. But they were defending their rights, they thought, even if that right was not their right. They were defending their homeland. They're fighting against other Americans about this. And here we've got this civil war going on, and the reasons for the war are pretty dubious, aren't they? But of course, that's the only war ever that has happened over dubious, questionable things, right? Sarcasm, you do get it, right? When the Israelites involved God in the process, when did they involve God? Before they made the decision to attack or after they made the decision to attack?
Well, they was following what God said. God told them to, before they inquired of him, they told him if there's something wrong that comes up in y'all's midst, destroy it immediately. That way it doesn't spread throughout all of them. So they were doing that, but they didn't inquire of God until they decided to attack.
Okay, well, they would be saying, and I see what you're saying, that they are trying to listen to what God says about morality and what punishment should go with this kind of sin in order to do that, but they didn't ask God about how to do it, did they? They weren't doing that. They asked God, but were they asking him after the decision was made to go to war or before? Now, wait a minute. Whose side is God on? He's on the north side? Or the Benjamite side, or all of Israel? Okay, he's on the side of right. What does God do here? Why doesn't God just say, you guys need to set an ambush? Why does he say first, Judah go up? Tell me about the geography of Benjamin and Gibeah, Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and what tribe is Benjamin pretty much surrounded by? Who's the closest tribe to Benjamin all around? What has Judah done about the men of Gibeah in the past? Are they set out to be the first lambs to slaughter because of their toleration of this? I don't know. But the Bible says quite plainly, God said, let Judah go up first, and they are going to get killed. Right? It's interesting, I did not write down the reference for this, but do you remember how Joash, the boy king, died? Joash, remember, is hidden whenever Athaliah, the queen mother, his own grandmother, kills all of the seed royal, but misses him because he's been hidden away by Jehoiada the priest. And he comes to the throne, and he's a very wise king, while Jehoiada helps him. When Jehoiada dies, he kind of goes off the rails a little bit, but he's still one of the best kings that Judah ever had. But how does he die? Pharaoh Necho comes, and he's going to go through the land. He tells Josiah, don't come out and fight me. I'm only going through your land. God has told me to go and fight. And he's going to fight the Assyrian Empire. And so, or the Neo-Babylonian Empire. But he has a mission from God, he says, and Josiah ignores his comment that God has sent me on this mission, and he goes out and fights him, and sure enough, Josiah dies, and Pharaoh goes right through the land anyway, and Pharaoh Necho is wiped out. His troops lose big at the Battle of Carchemish. God may have sent Pharaoh Necho, but he was sending him to his doom, and Josiah is actually interfering with God's punishment on Egypt in a sense. Here, the scriptures don't tell us about Carchemish, but history sure does. What happens to this Pharaoh Necho? Well, here, Benjamin's going to get punished, but doesn't all Israel deserve a little blame for what they've been allowing going on? Doesn't Judah deserve a little blame here? How do you think God was affected by this civil war? He has to be sad, but he's going to use it. It looks to me like he's using it to teach everybody involved a lesson. Why did it come to this point? Surely this was not a big fat secret that nobody knew anything about. The way people were behaving in Gibeah. Why didn't you do something about it, Judah? Why didn't you do something about it, Israel? And of course, why didn't you do something about it, Benjamin? What point was God trying to make in allowing the Israelites to fail in their first two attacks? He's going to make the point, you can't do it on your own. Go up. You want to go? Shall we go? Go. Do it your way. Go ahead. They can't do it on their own. How do the Israelites respond to their initial failures? They're going to ask God, and did you notice something about their language? What do they call Benjamin whenever they've been whooped? And all these people have died, and they've been humiliated in battle. That's my brother. Should we really go against my brother? They're going to start talking about blood now, right? Isn't that interesting? Did they learn their lesson, or just store up more vengeance against themselves? And how can you tell? I don't know. I'm only suggesting here. This is not revealed what we're talking about here.
You could probably say that had more vengeance because when they was running into the wilderness, they took out after them.
Okay. They took out after him into the wilderness. And of course, what's going to eventually happen to both Judah and Israel? They're going to end up in captivity, right? Sooner or later. That's going to happen. But it seems like God is eventually going to tell them, here's the way you do it. But they're thinking, we're doing it. Why did Gideon have to do things the way God said? They needed to learn to rely on God, and God wouldn't let them do it with 32,000. God wouldn't let them do it with 10,000. God says use 300 to start this battle. Now, by the way, as you read, all of Israel comes in after the rout has begun. All those soldiers, and some are angry that they didn't get in on it afterwards. But those 300, that's God's plan. Do it God's way, you can't fail. But if you're going to say, here's my plan, shall I go? Go. Go. We'll miss you. So bad. It's so sad. What's going to happen to you? Go ahead. But I'm wondering if they weren't just storing up some more vengeance against themselves. From the two accounts of the battle, about how many Benjamins died in battle? Did you do the math? I've got, the way the New American Standard Version read, the total of those who died, we were about the verse 40s. 600 fled, 18,000 fell here, and then another 5,000 ran, but 2,000 of them, so we got 20,000 of them dead, but we've got 600 left. And they had gathered, and here we read 25,100 of Benjamin died that day. So that's probably our total, but we have totals of what had happened here and there and someplace else, that 5,000 ran and 2,000 got struck down by the sword. The point is, there's only 600 men left. They've got 600 left to start over with, right? In the heat of the battle, did the Israelites go too far or not far enough? What do you think? What did Israel think?
You could think they might have went too far by chasing after the fleeing soldiers. You know, that wasn't part of, they won the battle and they were just fleeing, and then they took out after the fleers, and then that's when they noticed the smoke and the fire, which was burning the whole city. And that could have been the judicial part of the chasing after them.
Yeah, they start running when they see the smoke coming up. Did you see that they turned their back on them? Think about the whole armor of God, the ancient armor described for the Roman armor, of course, that Paul describes in Ephesians chapter 6. What all have you got? A helmet? I guess that would protect the back of your head. What have you got on your torso? A breastplate. What's on the back? Not a thing. And it's really hard to run with that shield behind you, right? There's nothing protecting the back of a soldier who runs. Nobody is supposed to turn their back to the enemy, right? You're not supposed to be protecting your back. You're protecting your front. And here, whenever they've turned their back, they've given up. The only thing that they have for defense now is speed, and they're going to run for their lives. And this is, it's kind of like running from a bear. Don't do it. You can't outrun him. Put on your tennis shoes if your buddy's still wearing his boots, because you may not be able to outrun the bear, but you can outrun him. Remember that joke? But they're going to be mourning this. They're going to be so sad that they've gone this far. How easy is it to go too far? When you're making your point, when you're winning the argument, it's so easy to say things that, if you probably didn't say, I told you so about that house in Phoenix. That's not the smart thing to do, not a wise thing to do. What did Jacob say in his blessings as he's ready to die? What did he say what did he call Benjamin? A wild something. Genesis chapter 49, verse 27. He's a ravenous wolf. He is going to devour the prey at night. He'll divide the spoil. Has this blessing come true? Only in the sense that he who lived by the sword has died by the sword. Benjamin's always, though, going to be tough. They've got left-handedness is inherited. And it seems like the tribe of Benjamin got this because not only here are 700 men, left-handed stone slingers who can hit the breadth of a hair and not miss. David's going to have a similar group among him. They are great warriors in Benjamin, even though they're not the great big tribe. Let's take a look at chapter 21 very quickly. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, "None of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin in marriage." So the people came to Bethel and sat there before God until evening and raised their voices and wept profusely. And they said, "Why, Lord God of Israel, has this happened in Israel, that one tribe is missing today from Israel? You killed them." But anyway, and it came about the next day that the people got up early, built an altar there, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. Then the sons of Israel said, "Who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not go up to the Lord in the assembly?" This is a time you don't want this answer to be you. For they had taken a solemn oath concerning anyone who did not go up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, "He shall certainly be put to death." And the sons of Israel were sorry for their brother Benjamin and said, "Today one tribe is cut off from Israel. What are we to do for wives for those who are left, since we have sworn by the Lord not to give them any of our daughters as wives?" They have not learned from Jephthah. And they said, "What one is there of the tribes of Israel did not go up to the Lord at Mizpah?" And behold, no one had come to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. See, that's why they're asking the question. And the congregation sent 12,000 of the valiant warriors there and commanded them, saying, "Go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, along with the women and the children. And this is the thing you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male and every woman who slept with a male." And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man by sleeping with him. And they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Guess what, ladies? You're about to get married. Then the whole congregation sent word and spoke to the sons of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon, and proclaimed peace to them. And the tribe of Benjamin returned at that time, and they gave the women whom they'd allowed to live from the women of Jabesh Gilead, but they were not enough for them. They got 200 extra guys. And the people were sorry for Benjamin because the Lord had created a gap in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, "What are we to do for wives for those who are left, since the women have been eliminated from Benjamin?" And they said, "There must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, so that a tribe will not be wiped out from Israel, but we cannot give them wives from our daughters." For the sons of Israel had sworn, saying, "Cursed is he who gives a wife to Benjamin." So they said, "Behold, there's a feast of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, which is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the road that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south side of Lebonah." And they commanded the sons of Benjamin, saying, "Go, lie in wait in the vineyards and watch. And behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to take part in the dances, then you'll come out of the vineyards, and each of you shall seize his wife from the daughters of Shiloh and go to the land of Benjamin. And when their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, we shall say to them, 'Give them to us voluntarily, because we did not take for each man a man of Benjamin a wife in battle, nor did you leave them give them to them, otherwise you'd now be guilty. The sons of Benjamin did so and took the wives according to their number from those who danced, whom they seized. And they went and returned to their inheritance, rebuilt the cities, and lived in them. And the sons of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and his family, and each one departed from there to his inheritance. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. What triggered the second thoughts for Israel? Why are they mourning? They're worrying one minute and crying the next. They've lost a whole tribe. This is a national disaster. This is a family disaster. Remember, they're all related. They are a nation by race. What does that tell you about the fickle nature of human natures, the wisdom of war, the seriousness of vows? They did not think far enough ahead. How seriously did they take their vow? Well, not very. Well, they left the virgins on purpose. That's the whole point of this Jabesh Gilead punishment. They were looking for some place to get women from. They went to punish them, and then this is actually a way that Israel, after Jericho, was actually allowed to take spoil. They weren't allowed to leave everybody alive, but if they wanted a wife from the spoil, they could take a virgin. But they had to kill the children, and men and women. So this was not something they made up on their own right there. They're using a previous precedent, but this had never been used against Israel themselves. But they're very serious about their vows as long as they can find a loophole. And so that's the reason why they pull up this dancing idea, is so that we can get them a wife and no one gives them. You just don't make a stink about it afterwards. I didn't give her. He stole her. Should Israel be commended for taking or criticized for making this vow? Yeah, whenever they're making the vow, they're saying, let's wipe this tribe out. We'll never give them a daughter. And then they think, well, now we're crying because we were going to wipe the tribe out, and now we've got what we wanted, and all we have to do is let these 600 guys die in the rock up there. What about keeping this vow? Should they be commended for the way they kept the vow once it was made? It's just awful. The whole thing. Where is God in all this? Is he keeping their feet to the fire? Is he letting them off the hook? Is he hearing their whining and complaining? Don't start going off on your own, God seems to be saying to us. When you make your own plans, and you make your own best laid plans, you're not going to like it. Pray first.
They weren't living morally anyway. They all started out and acting the way they were. That wasn't what God wanted.
They're not living morally in the first place. And they've been tolerating this immorality. All the ones who were engaged, of course, were guilty, but then the whole of Israel knows this isn't a secret. Yeah, this almost seems contradictory between what Samuel's experience is and here in the book of Judges. Samuel is disappointed when, as a judge, his sons and he are rejected. And God says, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me, and they want a king. But later on, the problem that is going on in the entire era of the judges is Samuel's the exception. Most of the judges are local, small, and mostly people do whatever they want to do. There's no king and there's no general rule. There's just these judges, and probably Jephthah's over on the eastern side of the Jordan, and others are over in the west and maybe in the south. They're not controlling everything. Samson never seems to really rule, even though he's delivering, and he's one of our judges. So they're living in this period of anarchy. How do they try to circumvent the spirit of the oath but not the letter of their oath? Let's fix this with kidnapping. That's a plan. Let's wipe out an entire village. And let's enforce selectively this idea that they made their oath. They would not have gone up and destroyed Jabesh Gilead, would they have, if they hadn't needed the virgins?
Well, they didn't know the virgin was there. They didn't find it, so they went there and sorted them out.
I think if you read the text, you're seeing they find out that they don't have enough wives. And they ask, who didn't go? And then you have the explanation. They'd made this oath. And then they're going to go up to Jabesh Gilead, and they're warned there, you can only bring back the virgins. And these guys aren't taking the virgins themselves. They seem to have this whole plan in order to get the virgins to solve their problem. Who are they going to alienate by this plan? If my daughter's dancing, I'm going to be mad. I'm not going to be happy. And this is what we got to do. And evidently it was temporary. What's going to happen because of this seizure at Shiloh? Take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 9. 1 Samuel chapter 9, verses 20 through 24. But as for your donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, that's Saul, do not be anxious, Samuel's talking to Saul, do not be anxious about them, for they've been found, and on whom is all the desire of Israel, and on you and all your father's house? Saul answered and said, am I not a Benjamite of the smallest tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you speak like this to me? And Samuel took Saul and his servant, brought them into the hall, and had them sit in the place of honor among those who were invited, about 30 persons. And Samuel said to the cook, bring the portion which I gave you, of which I said to you, set it apart. And the cook took up the thigh with its upper part and set it before Saul. And Samuel said, here it is, what was kept back. It was set apart for you. Eat. Until this time it's been kept for you, since I invited the people. So Saul ate with Samuel that day. From this seizure at Shiloh, what very important Benjamite's going to show up? A wife is grabbed for a Benjamite. Who's the Benjamite that'll be head and shoulders of everybody else? Saul. Saul is going to come out of this. God knows what he's doing. He has his plans, and they are always effective. They always work. We may not always get them, but could you advance the next slide for me? I have lost control. Maybe you can and maybe you can't. There we go. Let's think about it. What's more painful, intra-family or intra-church conflicts, and why? Man, I don't know. I hate them both. How about you? And I think the inter-church things hurt me most, but kills you. When God seems less than willing to answer prayer the way you want it to, how do you handle it? How do you handle it when the answer maybe is wait, or maybe, or no, not happening? Do you find a way around it? Do you pout? Do you get angry at God? Do you try to do it your way? Anything you can look back on with 20/20 hindsight? I sure can.
Lots of times we wish you'd have thought a little bit better
All we've got is our best judgment. Israel felt like one of its members has been cut off, like there's been an amputation. You ever felt cut off by events, by things taking place? We've got to turn back and trust God. When you're facing a crisis, what do you do first? Do you plan or do you pray? I'm not saying not to do both of these. You got to do both of them. Which have we got to do first? If we're going to make good plans, we'd better pray. If you want to make your own plans your own way, you're going to suffer the consequences. It's not a good plan. More purity give me, more strength to overcome, more freedom from earth's stains, more longing for home, more fit for the kingdom, more useful I'd be, more blessed and holy, more Savior like thee. I can't imagine Jesus having anything to do with any of these plans, can you? We've got to listen to him, and we've got to pray first. Next week, Naboth's vineyard. We'll get to visit a while about Jezebel and vegetables. Thank you so much.